All right, I think everyone who was in the lobby has now joined. So welcome everyone. Welcome one more time. My name is Alex. I'll do introductions in just a moment, but just before we do, I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining us today or tonight, whatever time of day it happens to be where you're from. I'm joining from beautiful New Zealand tonight, where dbvisit software is based, and as you can see, it's nighttime for us. So today's webinar is going to be all about our new 12.1 release. We're very excited to share it with you. This is going to be a slightly technical session focusing on our new API and CLI functionality. 12.1 12.1 is the new major version release. So we release a new major version of Standby Multi-Platform every couple of years, so it doesn't happen all that often. It's a special occasion for us. 12.1 is really all about the API and CLI, and so this seminar we're going to talk about why that's important and what we offer you. So just before we get underway, some brief introductions. Let's go to the next slide. So my name is Alex. As I said, I'm the head of product management and also the head of development at dbvisit Software. I'll be just making some introductions, answering any questions that you folks have, but the majority of today's presentation will be done by our resident Oracle Ace superstar, Vijay, who is also the head of our customer services and customer success. Vijay is a very, very experienced Oracle DBA and is generally a much smarter man than I am, so he's going to be taking charge today. So, just before we get underway, some quick housekeeping. If you do have any questions, please don't wait to ask them. Please ask them in the, use the little chat functionality to ask them straight away. As Vijay is presenting, I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A, and I'll be kind of interjecting to answer any questions when the opportunity presents itself. So please don't wait till the end. Ask what you've got straight away. We always get asked if the recording is going to be available at the end, and it absolutely will be. So at the end of the presentation today, the recording, everything will be recorded, and you'll be getting a link to that either later on tonight or tomorrow at the latest. And finally, if you would prefer to follow along in anything other than English, we have automated translations available. If you click the captions button underneath and select the language you prefer, you can follow along in that. So as I said, the main reason for the main new thing in version 12.1 is all about the API and CLI. And the reason for that is because even though we have a very beautiful graphical interface in the product, as our users, I really hope will agree, the reality is that often when you're dealing with databases in the real world environments, you're not going to be using a graphical interface. You're going to be using a command line, or you're going to be implementing an API series of commands. And that's what we really wanted to focus on this release, to make it easier for you to use the product in more automated ways, as well as make it easier to scale the control of our product. So the new features in brief, and we'll be going through all of these in detail in just a moment. Firstly, the API. So we've never, Standby Multi-Platform has never had a public API before. So we're very excited to finally bring it out. It's been on our roadmap for a while. The API is all about helping you to integrate Standby Multi-Platform into your own software and your own tools. I think most of us are aware that when working in the real world, chances are that dbvisit software is not going to be the only tool you're using when dealing with databases. No matter how amazing it is, you're probably going to be using something else as well. And so if you already have dashboards set up, it can be very useful to integrate into those rather than having to go to every separate user interface. And so the API is designed to help you take charge of that. It is fully functional. So what that means is that you're able to fully drive the product through the new API. You don't have to log into the UI at all if you don't want to. You should be able to do anything that we do from the graphical user interface. You should be able to do from the API. And part of that is extracting information for your own monitoring and reporting solutions. So if you have If you already have tools in place that monitor your systems in various ways that you've specified yourselves, you can use the API to extract any information out of our system and populate those. And that can be as simple as either just checking whether a configuration exists or checking what the time delay is, all the way through to extracting every detail of what a configuration is doing and almost reconstructing something like our own dashboard in your software, in your toolset. For the command line is the new command line. Internally, we actually call it the CLI 2.0, and the reason for that is because those of you who perhaps have been with us for a while will remember that we've already had a command line in our product for a long time. It was called dbvcli, and it was a command line specifically for the Oracle side of the product only. And that's still there. I just want to straight away say that that's still there. It's not being depreciated. If you're already using dbvcli and you're familiar with it and you're happy with it, you're welcome to continue using it. It is not, we will continue to support it exactly as it is today. It's not being depreciated. But it's, amazing though it is, it did have a few problems. It was Oracle only, so if you're dry, you couldn't use it to control SQL Server or Postgres configurations. And it also didn't scale particularly well. Depending on what you were trying to do, it could be challenging to run commands across a large number of configurations. The commands could be quite verbose. It just generally wasn't as good as it could be. So that's what drove us to develop this new command line. It's an all new syntax, a modern simplified syntax, and it's unified across all the database platforms that we support. It's got an all new dynamic interactive mode, which is very cool because that means that you can perform even quite complex actions really quite easily, even from the command line if you're not using the UI. And it has improved no prompt modes for use when you're integrating or automating things, as well as new functionality not previously available through the command line at all. Things like user management, for example. And finally, last but not least, every major release of Standby Multi-Platform contains some new improvement and upgrade, apart from the kind of the highlights. And this release is no exception to that. So there's a whole bunch of new things in the product just to make your life a little bit easier. Apart from the API and CLI, the GUI has been redesigned and is now much more responsive than it previously was. We've got SQL Server upgrades for those of you working with large numbers of configurations. There's new data retention management policies in place to reduce the size of your product, of the repositories. So those of you who have previously submitted support packages to us for issue resolution will know that they can become quite large. So this new version has massively reduced the size of our support packages, makes it easier for us to communicate and help each other if something should go wrong. So just a very quick couple of slides. I might just turn my screen brightness down a little bit so you can see me. There we go. So just before we get into the meat of things, a quick couple of slides about what this new version 12 architecture looks like with regards to the API and the CLI. And you can see them here at the top of the screen. So the existing command line the existing Oracle command line is called dbvcli, and you can see it there at the bottom, right next to the database. So that's the existing legacy command line, and that's still there. As I said, you're welcome to continue using it if you like. On top of that sits our internal components of Standby Multi-Platform. So our agent and our control center applications, they use that legacy command line and sit on top of it and expose all that functionality. And you can see the little GUI icon in the top right there. That's the user interface that we serve through a browser that you are hopefully all familiar with back from version 11. So the new command line and API are basically on par with that graphical user interface. You can see them there represented as dbvcli and dbv-API. They connect through our internal components exactly in the same way as our own user interface does. So That's what I meant when I said earlier that anything we can do, you should be able to do through the command line and the API as well, because it literally connects through the same endpoints. For non-Oracle databases, so for example, for Postgres, that dbvcli layer doesn't exist. As I said previously, that was an Oracle-specific piece of componentry. So for SQL Server and Postgres, the new CLI and API components, they talk directly to our agent manager and our control center applications. Exactly, again, the same as our own UI does. And so anything you can do with Postgres and SQL Server using our interface, you should be able to do using these new components. So I appreciate that that's quite high level, and I think now is a great opportunity for us to actually get in and have a look at how all this works. So I'm going to hand you off to our DBA superstar VJ, and I'm sure he's got plenty of interesting things to share with us.
Well, thanks, Alex. Thanks for the introductions. And yeah, I have exciting things ahead. And so first, let's look at so how dbvcli works, and then what are the components that should be installed, and then how basically the architecture works with dbvcli. So the control center for version 11, it's same control center for version 12 as well. So the control center must be installed even if you're just using dbvcli. So that's very important thing here. So you cannot not install control center because just you're going to use either API or CLI. So you have to install control center component, but you can choose not to use it. But the installation has to be done. And second thing is the new CLI can be either used remotely, connecting through any node. For example, you can do operations across different nodes. For example, you don't have to do operations certain primary related operations on only primary server and standby related operations only on standby server. But with dbvcli, you can do operations across all the servers. So for example, if you're having a separate control center installation, you can run through all the CLI operations by connecting directly from the control center server itself. So that would automatically help you to execute any number of commands. For example, your switchover, your failover, any operations related to primary, standby can be directly done either on this particular node or remotely. In previous versions, for example, for version 10, version 9, version 8, the dbvctl component has to be run on specific nodes. So for example, if you are running a log app report, that log app report has to be run only from primary, but not anymore with dbvcli. You can run that log report command from any server you want to. For example, if you have a collection of Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres servers, you don't have to connect to an Oracle server to run a log app report. You can use the CLI, which is connecting to a common control center. That's very important. So you can connect to a SQL server if you have already connected there. You could run a command line tool to check the log app report of the Oracle server directly. So that's amazing, right? And another thing is, if you're running it from a remote server or remote connections, the user credentials will be stored locally. This is very optional, so you don't have to store the user credentials locally. But since it's all your database servers, we recommend you to store them so that it can be, you don't have to provide the login information of GUI when you are trying to run any commands remotely. And another key aspect here is the self-explanatory help, which we'll go through in detail when we go through the commands, and also interactive and non-interactive modes. So either you can choose to run your dbvcl commands interactively, like step-by-step process, so it will prompt you for next steps, or non-interactive modes or no prompt modes where you could run those commands in a single line. So how easy it is. So that's so we'll see all these commands specifically for Oracle, SQL Server, and Postgres as well separately. And then we'll look at the API aspects of it. So now let's deep dive into the demo. Okay, so this is my setup here. So I have an Oracle configuration called dev, a Postgres configuration, two SQL Server configurations, one SQL Server configuration which is already there, and another one there is no standby setup. So we'll go through all these things. And before going through the actual setup, the documentation has all the data for it, for all the details or all steps or all the commands explained in detail. So if you look at an Oracle command, so it provides you the various options and parameters that can be used with it. And also there is an example here as well set up. So this is your documentation. So now let's go to the command list. So here, my control center server is a Windows server. So I'm going to run most of my commands from here, whether it's Oracle SQL Server or Postgres. But at the same time, I'll also show you how I can run these commands by not only I don't have to connect only to the Oracle server, but I can run it from remotely other servers as well. So I might log into a server where my Postgres configuration is running and choose to see how my log app is doing for Oracle. So I can also do that. So that's how remote connections work. So let's start. So dbvcli. So when you press enter with just dbvcli, it's going to give you a whole lot of helps. So it's going to give you a command list for Oracle, SQL Server, and Postgres. But before doing that, let's also go back to a little bit on the presentation. So the CLI usage, which is very, very important, right? So for when it comes to CLI usage, there are three major parameters that you have to take care of. First is the configuration name. The configuration name is nothing but the DDC for Oracle, which is dbvcli database configuration for Oracle, the database name for SQL Server, and the configuration name for Postgres. So this is your -D option. So if you don't give this -T option, then it comes the -T option. -T option you provide when you're going to set up a new configuration. For example, whether you're going to set up it for Oracle, SQL Server, or Postgres, that's when you're going to give -T command for it or option for it. And the next is the command. Command is nothing but apply logs, send logs, new, start, stop, starting up the database, stopping the database, changing your observers, changing your configurations, editing your configurations. All those commands can be done is your main command. And then comes the sub command. For example, if you're having observer, there are other sub commands like show, edit, add, remove, start. For example, if you're going to add a new instance for SQL Server, then you will have to say -T instance, -T MS SQL instance, and then it will give you a sub command whether to show the instance or add a new instance or unlink instance. All those commands will be provided. And so this is what we have already discussed. For example, dbvcli, if it runs from a local primary server, it's going to give me a direct response saying that the auto update is set for 120 seconds and daemon is running at for a PID of 3340. But if you run it a remote server, what will happen is from your control center server or your remote server, it is going to connect to the local agent and then what we'll do is it will execute it from the local agent itself. So from local, it's going to connect to your remote control center server, and then from there, it's going to execute the command, and then it's going to provide the results to you, thereby saying it is same as ORCLDB enabled with 120 seconds. So since I'm not running the command from the local agent, it's going to connect from the remote agent to the control center, and from control center, it's going to give me the output. So now let's go back here to show the examples. So first and foremost thing, how do I list all the configuration setup that I have in Control Center? I just say list. Oh, so this is the first thing which we're talking about, right? So whether you're going to save the login information. So whenever you first connect your dbvcli or first run your dbvcli command, it's going to ask you whether you want to save your login information. So here I'm going to save the login information. So I'm going to say save here just to save the login information here. And as you can see, I have all the configuration details here. The command is not proper in here. So what we'll do is let me switch to Linux machine so that I can show you the command much more. So as you can see, I don't have to run all these commands in a single machine. I can run it in a remote server, any server I want to run any commands I want. So here I can see list of configurations. What's your primary server? What is your standby server? and whether my observer is on or off, and with what is my auto update schedule. For example, here the auto update schedule is 240 seconds, and the time gap is 1 minute and 56 seconds. And for Postgres, it is saying it is streaming, and the time gap, it says it is in sync. And same for SQL Server as well. So it says time gap is 4 seconds, and our observer is on. For other configurations, says it's off, and the type of configuration. So you don't have to worry about whether you don't have to remember the configuration names or anything. It's going to clearly tell you the configuration type here, whether it's Oracle, Postgres, or SQL Server. And here is my configuration name details. So it's dev pg5432 adworks and department. Let's see, is there any subcommand for this particular command here? Okay, so if you see here, there is a subcommand here called as with db state. Let's see what is the output if I run the command with db state. Let me clear the screen. Now it's going to show me what is the status of my primary and what is the status of my standby. And if you see for my MS SQL configuration DEPT, my primary is online, and here it clearly says that there is no standby database. If I have, if I had shut down my standby database, it should show it as offline. But here it is smart enough to recognize that the standby database is not available, and I have to create a standby database as well. So this is a basic command here. Now let's switch back to my GUI here. And let's start looking at individual commands. So first and foremost thing, let's look at -d dev. Dev is a configuration name for my Oracle, which is my DDC. Let's see if I want to list what are the command options that I have now. I'll say -help here. See if we can observe here, the command is smart enough to recognize that -d, the dev configuration name, is for Oracle, and it lists only the help that is needed for Oracle. So all these are only needed for Oracle, command list for Oracle, and also the global options. It does not list all SQL Server Postgres commands. It's only based on the configuration name. If my configuration name here is for SQL Server, it is going to list only the commands that are available for SQL Server, which makes it our job easier as well. So you don't have to worry about, should I remember all the commands? Should I have to worry about what are the command lists that is available? Or should I refer back to documentation back and forth? No, the command list itself will provide you with details specific to the configuration name itself. For example, if you're using an Oracle configuration name, it's going to give list of helps for Oracle configuration name alone. So now let's look at log gap report here. So there are a couple of ways of running this. Either you can run it as log-gap-report, or you can just run it as LGR. Let's run it as LGR. So it clearly shows me here, right? So it's going to tell me that the configuration name is dev, the primary server name is Vitu, and the standby server name is Varu. And then the primary is online, the standby is in recovery mode, and then it gives me the log gap report or time gap very clearly here. This is similar to your dbvctl log gap report, but if you remember, if you've been using dbvctl commands, you know that this command cannot be run on your standby server, or this command is not available to be run on your dbv server dbv server where you have installed the GUI aspect, because the dbvctl is not available there. So this gives us a very good advantage of saying that I can run my command line interface anywhere I want. So here I've run it from GUI. Let's look at a server. If you want to look at a different server altogether. For example, this is a server where I have my Postgres installed. Let's see if my command line works here. So even here, it is asking me to save the login information because I have not saved it anywhere yet. And if you see, still I can run my command lines here. So even from a server where I have running Postgres, I'm able to check the status of my other databases running or serving in the same control center without any issues. So this is the biggest advantage here of using dbvcli. You can still use dbvctl, but now you see the advantage or differences between dbvcli and dbvctl and how efficient dbvcli is when it comes to Oracle, because you don't have to worry about any specific servers or any commands or where it has to be run. Now let's look at a few more commands here. So another command that is very important is to know what is your license. So we can look at that as well. Minus detail. See here. Now, if I just run the license command, here it tells me that you need to have a subcommand format. Either you have to show the license or edit the license. I'm just going to say show. So it's going to show me the license key here. And same with other commands as well. For example, if I say restart. So now it will tell me whether should I restart my primary or restart my standby. Let's look at the command further, drill down this command for this. For example, if I have to restart a specific database in a single line without selecting this, let's look at this command line here. Let's go to the documentation page. Look at restart. See, there is a minus hyphen role option. So here I can say what the role of my database and which database I have to restart here. So I can easily go here and say, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to run this command, but I'm going to terminate this command and say dbvcli minus ddev restart hyphen role standby. This will restart my standby database. So the prompt is skipped because I have specified the role that I have to restart my database. So in dbvctl, again, you have to restart the database by, if you're using CLI, you have to go to the specific node where your primary or standby is running and then restart the database there. But with dbvcli, you don't have to worry about it. You just have to provide the role, or if without the role, it is going to prompt you which database you want to restart, and then you can restart the specific database. And then we can also look at so there is no such, because if you're trying to use the same command as my dbvctl, it's not going to use. So I have to look at what is the command that is there for Oracle. So the command that is there for Oracle is the previous command that we saw, right? I can say list. So it is going to show me for the specific configuration, what is the status? If you have to look at the status, I have to say with db state. So this is going to tell me my primary is online, my standby is recovering, and the time gap information is 3 minutes and 2 seconds behind my primary. And the auto update is on for 240 seconds, and the observer is on as well. So like this, all those commands, all the commands that you have for SQL Server, all the commands that you have, sorry for saying SQL Server, all the commands that you're having for dbvctl is there in dbvcli as well. So you have commands for switchover, read-only test, DR test, licensing, observer, changing the observer settings, adding emails, start, stop, creating support package. All those commands are available within dbvcli itself. Now, let's switch gear and then look at SQL Server. So for SQL Server, if you look at my GUI, I have a standby which is running for AdWorks database. For DPT database, I don't have any standby that is running. So let's create a standby for that. So now dbvcli minus d dpt cst. So now it's going to prompt me with all the details that I need to provide. If you're going to use a no prompt, then you'll have to if you check the user guide, it'll give you the various parameters that has to provide if you have to use a no prompt option. But here I'm using a prompted option. I'm going to use the same. So I'm saying yes, and I can change this to 180 here. Enable create standby database. Since my database is small, the database created faster here. And this is a cool thing here, because with dbvcli, the another thing very important is the commands that you run here will also be translated to your GUI as well. So it keeps track of what are the commands that you run as part of CLI. So it will also be visible in your GUI as well. So it goes there as well and shows you that someone has created a standby database for this. And it will give you the detailed information of that as well in the GUI. Now, let's look at something. So for example, I want to see. So here, the instance show command will tell me, it will give me the options whether I want to look at the primary or the standby instance. And then it will give me what is the port number, the instance name, the authentication type. The authentication type here is a Windows authentication, which I'm using, and it is connected. So there is also another command here, for example. So there is also a list command here. Let's see what is the difference between show and list. So the list command will tell me the instance statuses of all the pairs of primary and standby. For example, my primary SQL Server instance status, my standby instance status. If I have multiple SQL Server instances configured in my control center, it is going to list all those instances and then say whether it is connected or not connected. This is the shortest way of knowing whether your primary SQL Server instances is up and running or not. Here, if the state shows it as connected, it means the instance is up and running and the instance is connectable from control center. This is like a status check for your SQL Server instance as well. So, and this command is available even for your API, which I'll show you later. And if I have to, let's say, if I have to add a new configuration here, let's just say I have a database in my primary for which I need to create a standby. So for that, I use the type of configuration that I'm going to create. The type of configuration is either Oracle, MS SQL, or Postgres. See here, when I said TMS SQL, it is saying that what should I run? So it gives me the options only for SQL Server here. So it either says, these are the command options that are available and what do you want to do? So here I want to either do a new or a setup. You can use either of these commands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say new. Now this is going to tell me what are the source hosts that are available. So if you're choosing anything other than the SQL Server, it will tell me that the SQL Server instance is not available. For need of time, I'm going to say my primary is a server called as Toru. My standby is a server called as Fa. So I'm going to choose Toru as my primary, and it's MS SQL Server, and I'm going to choose it. It is going to list the database as well. EMP. And if you can see here, when I chose my standby host, here my primary host is already grayed out. because you have already selected as a primary. So it is grayed out and saying that you cannot choose the same server as your standby server. You have to choose a different server.
I feel like this would be a good moment to explain that. So Rima, Toru, Fa, and the other names on VJ's the other server names that VJ is using are actually numbers in Te Reo Maori. Te Reo Maori is the language of the native people here in New Zealand, and so we use the numbers ring system sometimes just to make our test service stand out a little bit.
Okay, so while I look for a license key here, I thought I had it. I had a file open, but looks like I have not. Let me. There you go. I got it. Oh, yes, and then it will create a configuration. As soon as it creates the configuration here, you will see that the configuration is created here in your GUI as well. So both work in tandem so that it makes a connection to the control server and says that, okay, fine, I have created a configuration in CLI and it's available in GUI as well. So I'm not going to do anything there. But another key command that I want to show is, so as you all know, we had a very good feature in SQL Server where you're able to schedule standby mode, right? So you're able to make your standby into read-only and then schedule it in such a way that it can be automated and you can choose the intervals based on your time of the day or time of the week or the day of the week or day of the month or day of the year based on a cron schedule. You can choose whatever schedule you want to change your standby to read-only mode and then put it back into rest on how long you want, what is the duration that you want to keep your standby mode in your mm, read-only mode. So that is available with SQL Server from version 11 onwards, but we have with CLI, it's much more easier for you to show the display here. Or no, like this is more interesting when you see it with API. So I can show that command in API. Let me show you a different command. Let me show you how to run a switchover here. So here so when you run a switchover, so thereby easily saying that, so whether you want to have any user scripts that are available, because I have not defined any user scripts, so it's not going to show any user scripts here, and then confirm the switchover. Switchover is completed now. As you can see here, it will kind of immediately show me that the switchover has happened. And here it's going to show me that. Let's look at a few more commands for SQL Server before we move to Postgres. Okay, so list backup locations is where it will show you what are the backup locations for your primary and standby, where your transaction log backups are taken on primary and the transaction log backups are copied from primary to standby. And you can also edit the backup locations directly from CLI itself. And all this command can be run from any server as well. So you don't have to run it specifically on either primary or standby. You can run it from either primary or standby. You can run it from a GUI server if you have a separate server, or in your GUI if you have a different platform altogether, like Oracle or Postgres. You can change these commands directly from there as well, so without any problems. And let's look at I'm trying to figure out what is the command that we can show. Okay, let's look at list backup locations. So here, since if I make any mistake, it is going to clearly show me whether what is the mistake that I have made. So here the command is not right because I'm using a wrong, I'm using it as a sub command, but it is a command here. Now it lists me clearly what are my backup locations. So this is the advantage of using CLI with SQL Server because it's completely new feature with version 12, because in version 11 we never had any CLI. We had limited capabilities to run CLI commands directly from your agent manager or control center like activation. But here with version 12, you have the entire range of commands that you can directly run from GUI can be run from CLI as well. Now, let's quickly move on to Postgres. So with Postgres, let's see if we can create a new configuration.
I gotta say, it's fun watching you do all this, Vijay, because you know, as I said, the legacy dbvctl command line was, you know, it was great and it served its purpose for many years, but we didn't have anything like this kind of interoperability between different database platforms and the UI and everything happening in real time. It's great. It's great watching someone do this.
Absolutely, right? So because we are able to do everything from a single server, which was not available earlier. Everything has to be run on a specific server. For example, if you're going to run a switchover using CLI, you have to connect to the primary server and run it. But here it's not the case, right? I can run it from any server I want. I
Yeah.
don't even have to log into any other servers. I just can keep my console server open and do whatever I want.
The other thing that I'd like to mention is, and this is something that we don't have time to demo during today's webinar, is a lot of these commands are actually functional even in all kinds of emergency situations if the control center is down. So, so there's a great amount of redundancy built into the system. Even if the control center isn't available, you're still able to run a large subset of these commands on, you know, whatever host you can get access to. That's not going to be something that Vijay will show us today, just because of time limitations.
Yes.
But it's great to it's great to see this new system in action.
Awesome. Yeah. So my primary is Rima. So now it's going to discover what are the ports that are available for my cluster. So I'm going to choose 5433. So I have my configuration created. Let's go to the server and let's go to the GUI and look. So if you see here, I have my setup ready here. Let's create a standby here. Because creating standby for SQL Server and Postgres is much more faster because we have control over the database size, which is not the case for Oracle. See here. Now with Postgres, you have to provide what type of streaming configuration that you want to create. So there are two configuration options for standby creation options for SQL Server, not SQL Server, for Postgres, right? One is streaming, another is archiving. So I can say that CST archiving. So now, so it's going to show me all the details. It says, yes, enable hot standby. And yeah, the source database location, standby backup location, source log location, standby log location. Yes. Done. So it's as simple as that. So now You can see that I have a streaming configuration that is available here with Postgres itself directly. Now, the next step is, let's look at a few more commands for Postgres. So the important command for PostgreSQL is either activation. The other important command is cluster info. So you can look at the cluster info directly here. Say that cluster-info. So either for primary or standby. Here I can choose whether it's primary or standby. Now it's going to provide me the cluster information. The cluster status is online. What is the port number it is running? What is the data directory? What is the configuration directory? What are the databases that are available? Total size and the table space locations as well. So imagine all this information is available to you handy directly from CLI itself. So you don't have to log into any of these servers to look at it, or even log into GUI to get that information directly from the GUI itself. It can be done directly from command line itself. Now, since we have seen enough of CLI, let's switch gears and go to API. So from API usage, so what the main thing for API usage is, first is your API URL and the commands and the subcommands as well. So for example, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to show it using Postman, which is a tool that we use for testing testing APIs for Postgres, Oracle, and SQL Server. And here, if you look at, I'm having a command which is for streaming mode DR database for Postgres, and it's giving me the configuration information there directly. What are the parameters that are there? And it will give me an output. The output will be in a purely a JSON format. For here, the output I am given example is for Oracle. So it clearly gives me the output in a beautiful JSON format saying that what is the current sequence, what is the archive sequence, what is the time lag, and everything is provided directly from your as a JSON output. So you can use it for whatever, you can use it to integrate it to any other tool that you want integrated to. Let's go here and okay. So let's look at the Oracle command here. So if you see here, my dbvisit URL is this, and I'm saying list configuration. So it is listing me, it's providing me the DDC configuration details in a beautiful JSON format here. It not only lists the DDC configuration, it lists me all the configuration details. For example, here it says that for port 5432 for the configuration PG5432, it is streaming mode and it is in sync. And what are all the information that that is available for the configuration information that is available. For example, I have not enabled email, I have not enabled Slack, I have not enabled any heartbeat, so it says false. And similarly, it gives me all the information that is needed here. So let's look at a different command here for us. Let's say list event. So here it is listing me all the events that is there available. So whatever the events that are available, like for example, the events for creating your standby database are the task list, like and whether when I restarted my standby database, the observer would have kicked off and told me that I'm not, the information is not available. So all this information can be directly seen here. And this is listed as the API calls as well. And I can also perform a read-only test quickly here. So it is performing a read-only test here. So the output says true. So now you can clearly see it from GUI that it has posted that particular command to GUI and it is executing the command there. If it's not unable to post that command on the GUI, it immediately return an error saying that it is unable to post the command to your GUI, or it shows a failure. And similarly, we have commands for SQL Server. This is the command that I wanted to show you, list schedule. Okay, so here it says listed configuration is not SQL Server, it says configuration ID as 1. Let me go here and find out what is the configuration ID is 7. This is where I know my configuration ID from. I change my configuration ID to 7 and then run it again. And it clearly shows me what is the schedule that I have. So every hour, on top of the hour, it is going to put my standby database into read-only mode for 20 minutes. And then put it back into restoring mode. Like that, I have commands for Postgres as well. Let's look at, cluster info. Oh, same here. I need to look at the configuration ID for Postgres. So here the Postgres configuration ID is 4. But it clearly show me all this data. So as you can see, it's much more simple and straightforward here with API. And I want to show you the documentation as well for a moment here. So the documentation is it's extensive. So we have all the commands for SQL Server, Postgres, and Oracle for CLI, and similarly, all the commands for APIs as well. So for example, we have divided into 4 sections: system APIs, Oracle APIs, Postgres, SQL APIs, and SQL Server APIs. For example, apply Oracle. So how the command should be used, the response, properties. So all this information is directly available on the command on the documentation itself, and the documentation will be updated as and when new releases comes and then new commands are added to CLI and API. So the documentation will be updated directly here. And same for CLI as well. So if you look at CLI, all these commands are available with an example for CLI. And individual parameters that are available if you want to run it in a non-interactive mode. Okay, I think we are running out of time now. Let me go back to slides. So this is very important for us and for everyone here, especially for ISVs, MSVs, and private cloud solution where everything is integrated into a single point of view, where you can use APIs to remotely call to a separate application where all your monitoring softwares is integrated, and then you can use your API calls for log app reports, statuses, listing all the databases statuses, and everything can be done directly using a single monitoring tool itself by doing API calls. So that is where our fully featured API usage comes into picture. And for command line interface, it's unified across Oracle, SQL Server, and Postgres. So you don't have to switch between 3 different command line tools for Oracle, SQL Server, and Postgres. So for Oracle, the dbvcli is still available, but dbvcli is the way to move forward to, because you can run these commands from any server that you want. You don't have to run it from specific primary or standby servers. And with version 12, You can deploy StandbyMP very quickly on any environment because it is very simple and straightforward installation on Windows, Linux, on-premise or cloud. And the standardization is across for Oracle, SQL Server, and Postgres. So you can integrate everything into a single GUI and show the statuses of all your configurations across platforms in a single console view. The next steps would be to download version 12.1. You can try for free. We'll provide you with trial keys. And if you have any questions, you can contact either me or Alex. Alex, do you have anything to add?
That's awesome. That's awesome, Vijay. Thanks for that. That was really, really good. It's, you know, it's a special joy for me because obviously, you know, me and my team spent so long developing this stuff, but it's great seeing it in action, as it were. I never get tired of it. Thanks very much for joining us today, folks. We've probably got a couple of minutes left for any questions. If you have any last questions, please ask them in chat now. We've already had a whole bunch of really good questions. I think I've got to every single one of them. If you do have anything else on your mind, now's the time. So we'll give folks maybe another 30 seconds or a minute to ask questions if there are any. Otherwise, thank you very, very much for joining us. I do hope you'll get in touch and try out version 12.1. As with every major version we release, you know, I think it's a big upgrade. So we're always interested in your feedback. Doesn't look like there's anything coming through. So I guess Vijay, you were incredibly clear. No one has any additional questions. All the questions have already been answered. So we'll end it there for today. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.